California is famously a huge state, third largest in the nation, spanning over 424,000 square kilometers. And even more uniquely, it hogs almost the entirety of the west coast of the United States. But there's nothing that says a large state is inherently bad or less efficient. The key thing is that states should follow natural geographic dividing features rather than arbitrary decisions. And here, California does a surprisingly good job of following this metric. We have the Pacific Ocean to the west and the massive Sierra Nevada and Cascade Mountains to the east. However, the northern and southern border completely disregard these natural dividing features being set by treaty after the American-Mexican War. So the question for this video is, what if California, instead of having these political border influences, instead continue to follow its natural dividing geographical features? What would that state look like, and just how much power and influence would it have within the greater United States? So the first thing to know here is that this new natural California would be larger. California is famous for its Mediterranean climate, and with the help of a simple climate map, we can see exactly where this zone exists. And we can see it's very clearly contained between the coast and the immediate coastal mountain ranges, spanning a width of about 100 miles. Now, of course, there is some variation from north to south. For instance, there's a little bit more precipitation in the northern half of this region, but it's really just a subgroup of the larger climate biome. It's also worth noting that this climate biome of a Mediterranean type climate is also very rare on a global scale. It really only exists around the Mediterranean and here along the US West Coast. And this is due to the geography of the region, the mountains, the ocean temperature, and the way that the prevailing winds interact with both features. So when it comes to redrawing the borders of California to capture this zone of Mediterranean climate, following the ridgeline of the coastal mountain ranges is a very clear choice. And this includes both the Cascade Mountains and the Sierra Nevada Mountains. And that does mean that this new California will extend all the way up the coast to the Canadian border. However, things become a little bit less clear in the south, because this continuous mountain range of the Cascades, Sierra Nevada Mountains, does come to an end before the US-Mexico border. And switching back to the climate map, we can also see that the desert biome begins to creep into this region. So due to these factors, we have to pull back from the Colorado River acting as a natural eastern barrier, and instead we can use the transverse and peninsula mountain ranges acting as a continuation of at least the effects of the Sierra Nevada Mountains. These are much closer to the coast, but they do carve out both Los Angeles and San Diego from the surrounding desert. And that leaves us with this, the new natural California, following the Pacific Ocean to the west and a nearly perfect continuous line of mountains 100 miles inland, composed of the Cascade, Sierra Nevada, transverse, and peninsular mountain ranges. Now, while the shape did change dramatically, the actual land area only grows by about 61,000 square kilometers, which is roughly a 15% increase from modern-day California. However, by absorbing the economic hubs of Southern California, the San Francisco Bay Area, and the Pacific Northwest, this new California would generate upwards of a $6 trillion GDP, which is about a 45% increase from modern-day California, which has a GDP of around $4 trillion. And it's even enough to surpass the entire Northeast Corridor, which today is the most economically productive part of the country with an annual GDP of about $5 trillion. Now, this new California would represent over 21% of the entire US economy, and it does this while only being home to 17.5% of the US's population. Its dominant industries would include global tech giants, which have a huge concentration in both Silicon Valley and Seattle. We also have a huge entertainment industry focused around Los Angeles with Hollywood and Netflix studios, along with an absolutely booming tourism sector, as this state will now be the #1 most visited state in the country. And just to give you one final fact on the pure economic dominance of the state, out of the world's 10 largest companies, 6 of them would all be headquartered in this one state. And when it comes to politics, this megastate would be completely unmatched within the United States. It would have an estimated 75 seats in the House of Representatives and command a whopping 77 electoral college votes. And somewhat remarkably, despite its huge size, politically, this would be a very unified state. If we switch over to the 2024 election map by county, we can see just how cohesive this region truly is. And I think this just reaffirms that using the mountains as a natural dividing feature and capturing this cohesive both economic and climate biome does make for effective state boundaries. And finally, we have to touch on the massive effects this new state would have on its surrounding regions, because this new California would essentially absorb Oregon, Washington. However, most of their land is located east of the Cascade Mountain ranges. And again, using this political map as a guide, we can see that these people have a lot more in common with interior states like Idaho versus this new California. So thus, I think this land should be absorbed into these neighboring states, helping to slightly offset the massive influence of this new California. But even so, no single state would come close to matching the influence of this new California within the United States. To do that, you would need to build a rival megastate somewhere else in the country. And this will be a topic for a future video. So if you guys want to see that, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next one.